Hello my sweet friends, welcome back. As I'm sure you already know if you clicked on this video, it is time for another monthly wrap up. In July I read 14 books and I feel like unfortunately I had a pretty mediocre reading month in terms of how I felt about these books, but obviously we'll get more into that as the video progresses. However, I do have some fantastic news. I, Rachel Catherine, read my entire July TBR in the month of July. Yeah. Every single book that I put on my TBR, I read it. Every single one. When I say I've never done that, I mean I have never done that. And I just needed to make a big deal of it because I don't know when it's gonna happen again. Anyways, let's talk stats for a second. Out of the 14 books that I read 5 fantasy books, 4 romance, 2 general/literary fiction books, and then we have 1 mystery, 1 thriller, 1 sci-fi, and 1 dystopian. So we kind of read all across the board this month, which is really fun. But I think I'm just gonna talk about these in order of how I read them. To start off the month, I picked up Twin Crowns by Catherine Doyle and Catherine Weber. If you haven't heard about Twin Crowns, it is a YA fantasy book about twin sisters who were separated from birth. These twins were both part of the royal family. Their parents were killed. One of the twins was raised in the castle, raised to be a princess, and the other twin was taken away and raised with the witches. And there's a lot of political stuff happening between just like the kingdom and the witches. They don't like each other. I honestly had a lot of fun with this book. It felt very lighthearted. To be honest, it actually felt like a Disney movie. Like it fully, in my head, I was imagining kind of like Tangled vibes. It has those like Disney-esque jokes where they're kind of just like silly and clumsy and funny, and it's all very like feel good, even though there is this like political intrigue and like these more serious things going on. It doesn't ever really feel that serious. I really liked our characters. I really liked the storyline. I thought it was just like fun and adventurous. I think my only criticism is it felt a little young, which obviously it's YA and I am in my 20s, so this book is not designed for me, but I feel like I could have read this when I was like 12. Like it doesn't even feel like one of those books that I would have read when I was 16. It felt quite young to me. And so I ended up rating this 4 stars. I had fun with it. I enjoyed my time. And then I decided to go straight into Cursed Crowns, which is the sequel to Twin Crowns. Now here's where things fell off a little bit for me. I personally feel like Twin Crowns could have been a standalone, and it kind of felt like it should have been a standalone. Obviously the ending definitely lent itself to having a sequel, but I feel like with a slightly different ending, it could have very easily been a standalone, and I think I personally would have enjoyed it better if it just ended there. It kind of felt complete to me. It didn't feel like it needed a whole nother story, and so I think going into the second book, I almost was like, why am I reading this? Like, why does this exist? It kind of feels like they created drama at the end of the first book so that there could be a second book. I don't know, I just like went into this and I started reading it and I was like, this feels so redundant to me. I also had a hard time with this because a huge portion of this book is what would you call it? Like a quest, like a travel situation. And I don't know what it is about it, but that whole like traveling plot situation that was going on was so boring to me. So boring. But I pushed through this and then I got to the end of this book and you're telling me Twin Crowns 3 coming soon. Huh? Why do we need a third book? We didn't even need a second book. Will I be reading the third book? At this stage, probably not, but honestly, I love these covers so much. Maybe I'll just buy the third one just to have the cover on my shelf. But like, no, I don't know. I think this one just kind of ruined it for me, which is such a shame. I know a lot of other people feel differently, but that was just my opinion and my journey with reading this book. But I will say, very happy to have these on my shelf. Look how gorgeous these spines are. I'm obsessed. The next book I decided to pick up was Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. I've read one other book by Talia Hibbert and I liked it, but I didn't love it. So this was kind of like me giving Talia Hibbert a second chance. One of the things I didn't love about her first book was it was just like super lusty, and those aren't my favorite types of books. So I thought because this one was YA, I wouldn't have the same problem, and I didn't. It didn't feel too lusty for me. There were some really cute scenes, but overall I was just like, yeah, it was fine. Like I enjoyed my reading experience, but I don't think I'm going to be thinking about this one for a long time after finishing it. If you don't know what this book is about, we are following Celine and Brad, I think. Their mums are best friends, so they grew up together and they were best friends until they got to middle school or early high school. I can't remember exactly. But they had a big falling out and they've been enemies ever since. And I feel like I'm sure you've heard a million times people discuss the idea of enemies to lovers in a contemporary romance novel. It just doesn't hit the same, especially when you've read so many great enemies to lovers in fantasy books. So when they were like, we're enemies, I was just like, you literally had one argument and you just haven't communicated since then. You are not enemies. So that was one thing I didn't love about this book. Also, there's a lot of talk about TikTok in this book, which just like, I don't think it's for me. I don't hate it. Like it wasn't something where I was like, I can't read this anymore. It didn't turn me off that much. much, but I don't know, books talking about social media in detail, it takes me out of the story a bit. So yeah, I read it. I liked it. I think I'd give it like 3.5 stars. Like definitely not bad, and I don't really have much to complain about, but it just didn't stand out to me. However, the next book that I want to talk about is such a standout, like so phenomenal, and easily my favorite book of the month. And that book is Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare. I actually have a reading vlog where I read a few of these books in that video, so you can definitely check that out if you want to see more of my thoughts and my experience reading this. I'll try and link it down below for you guys. I love Cassandra Clare. Specifically, I love the Infernal Devices in the Last Hours. Like, I don't even know why or how, but they're just so good. The characters, the storyline, the drama, the angst, like it all... chef's kiss. But I started reading Cassandra Clare in December last year, and now at the end of July, so like 7 months later, I have read all, I don't even know how many there are, 15 books in the last like 7 months, and now what am I supposed to do with myself? So this was an easy 5 stars. The next book that I finished was Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. I feel like I've been meaning to read this for so long, and I finally did it. I feel like all of the books that I've read by Olivia Blake have all been so vastly different, and I don't understand how she can have so many different writing styles, so many different ideas of worlds and characters and storylines. Like I don't know how her brain works, but I find it fascinating. And then she has this book, which is like a literary fiction, general fiction type of book. It's a love story, but it's not a romance, and it has this beautiful writing to it, and it's literally like 260 pages, yet it feels like it encompasses so much. Like, I don't know how she does it. If you don't know what Alone with You in the Ether is about, we are following 2 characters, 2 POVs. We're following Aldo, who is a professor, and he is incredibly intelligent and super passionate about very niche subjects. And then we have Regan, who is super impulsive, kind of like doesn't know what she wants to do with her life, but also wants to do so many things. I think they both also struggle with mental illness, so it's also like almost a study on that, which I thought was really fascinating as someone who studies psychology at uni. In particular, Regan has a mood disorder, and in the author's note at the back of the book, Olivia Blake says that she herself also struggles with a mood disorder, and so obviously she was able to write Regan's POV from experience. And I think reading her POV specifically was fascinating to me as someone who has not struggled with that, who does not have a mood disorder. I feel like this is the closest I've been able to see like what that might be like for someone, obviously without experiencing it myself. And of course it's only one example of that, and every individual's experience with mental health is so different, but I feel like it gave me a much better understanding of people who struggle with mood disorders, why they act certain ways, why they do certain things, and overall I just thought it was really well done. In saying that, although I found it super fascinating, I didn't feel like I could really connect with our characters, and I don't know if that's because I don't deal with the same things that they deal with or what it really was about it, but I just felt like I was watching from the outside. Even though I was reading from their POVs, I couldn't fully like connect with the characters and with their storyline. I don't know why. That was just my reading experience. So I feel like for me it's sitting around a 4 stars because it wasn't like the perfect book for me, but it was so different from so many other things that I've read, and I really enjoyed my reading experience. And well, not always enjoyed. Some of it was really difficult, but I thought it was really well done. But after that, I picked up The Box in the Woods by Maureen Johnson, and I really enjoyed this. This is technically part of the Truly Devious trilogy, but I feel like it's kind of a standalone. So basically the Truly Devious trilogy centers around the Ellingham case. So we follow Stevie, our main character, as she tries to solve a cold case at the school that she's attending. So that's the Truly Devious trilogy, and that case gets solved by the end of the 3rd book. Then we have The Box in the Woods, where Stevie is on summer break from Ellingham Academy, and she gets a call from this guy who owns a summer camp, and he says that there are a bunch of murders that happened around that campsite many years ago, but he invites her to come and be a camp counselor at the summer camp and says, "I'd love if you could try and solve this case," which now that I'm looking back, I'm like, oh, this grown man called this teenager and was like, "Hey, come to my camp that I run and try and figure out this murder mystery that happened like 20, 30, 40 years ago. I can't remember exactly. It is a bit odd now that I'm thinking about it. But anyway, she goes. And she also brings along a bunch of her friends that she went to school with. So the friend group that you see in the first 3 books is also in this book, which is so fun. And yeah, you just follow her along as she tries to solve this mystery. And I just had a lot of fun with it. I'd probably give it like 4 stars. It was just like your classic YA mystery, but I ate it up. I loved it. And I definitely want to read 9 Liars, which is another book that's like kind of part of the Truly Devious series, but it's like its own little mystery. And I think that one's set in London, potentially. I just love a YA mystery. If you have any other recommendations, let me know. Next, I picked up Uglies by Scott Westfeld. This is a dystopian book that I think was popular quite some time ago. I don't know exactly when this had its like peak moment of popularity, but I know a lot of people read this when they were a lot younger. And I had some people recommend this to me and I thought this looks like a lot of fun. I read Divergent for the first time last year, which obviously I'm so late to the bandwagon, but I had so much fun reading that series. And so when I heard about this one, which is also a YA dystopian, I was kind of like, well, maybe this will give me the same feeling as Divergent. So the storyline of this one is basically obviously set in the future, and everyone in this world grows up ugly, and at 16 you go through this literal operation done by the government, like no choice, to become pretty. And once you become pretty, you get a few years of like partying and kind of like living the high life, being a socialite, I guess, and then you like start work and continue your life. And so at the start of this book you meet Tally. I think she's like 3 months away from turning 16. She's so excited to become a pretty, and at the beginning of this book she meets a friend, and that friend is very uneasy about the whole idea of having an operation and like becoming pretty, and she just like isn't too sure about it. And she kind of gets in Tally's head and kind of starts convincing Tally maybe they shouldn't become pretty, maybe they should try and escape and, you know, like run away. And so you get to the point in the book where Tally is about to turn 16 and she obviously has to make a decision. Is she going to run away with her friend, or is she going to stay and become pretty? And obviously the story goes from there. And honestly, that sounds like such a fascinating concept to me, and I was so intrigued how that was going to play out. And I started reading this and I was enjoying it, but the further the book got, I kind of was like, okay, like this is fine, but I'm not obsessed. And by the end, I finished it, and it kind of ends on a cliffhanger because obviously you're supposed to pick up the next book and like continue the story. And I just like couldn't decide if I could even be bothered to continue it. And obviously that is not a good sign, because that kind of shows that you didn't love it. And I think I've come to the conclusion that the concept of this book was better to me than the actual execution. Like I just personally wasn't obsessed with the way it played out, and I don't know what it was about it, because there's nothing I can pinpoint. Like there's nothing where I was like, I didn't like this specifically. I just was like, okay, like it's done, and I don't really care that it's done, and I haven't really thought about wanting to pick up the next book in the series. So I don't know, I'm not like against continuing the series, and I might at some point, but I'm not like dying to do so. Again, definitely not bad, and I wouldn't not recommend it, and if it sounds interesting to you, definitely go ahead and read it. I feel a bit indifferent towards it. The next book I picked up is definitely not my usual go-to. This is The Lost Flowers of Alice Hart by Holly Ringland. This book is coming out as a TV show. It might already be out by the time you guys are seeing this video. I'm not exactly sure. It comes out August 4th, and this is the TV show cover, which I actually really like. I think the original cover is absolutely beautiful as well though. This is classed as general fiction, but it also has some mystery, some found family, a tiny bit of romance to it. Like it really has a bit of everything. It's more of like a character study, I would say, on Alice Hart, who is our main character. We meet her when she's a little girl, and she grows up in a very difficult family. She's got a lot going on, and it's really hard to read. I honestly started this book and I was like, I don't know if I can keep reading this, because it was really difficult at the beginning because her home life is just not great. But I kept reading anyway, and honestly it got so much better. Basically Alice loses her parents in a tragic accident, and she has to go live with her grandma, who she didn't even know existed, who owns a flower farm. And the part of the book where Alice was just like growing up at the flower farm was my absolute favorite. I adored that kind of like part of the story, and it has a really beautiful full circle moment ending, which I really love the ending. And after I finished it, I was just so shocked at how much I enjoyed this, because it's just, like I said, not my usual genre, but I really recommend it. I feel like it kept me interested the whole time. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I don't know what I'd rate it, like a 4.25, maybe even a 4.5. Like now looking back, I'm like, I really had a lot of fun with this. Maybe like 4.25? I don't know. I definitely want to pick up her other book. I can't remember what it's called. The 7 somethings of Esther something. It just sounds really interesting as well, and I've heard good things, so definitely need to check it out. Guys, I finished my first Brandon Sanderson book, and it was so good. I decided to start my Brandon Sanderson journey with Warbreaker, and this was just so good. I don't even know like how to explain it. I feel like the worlds that Brandon Sanderson creates are so easy to understand when you're reading them, but so hard to explain when you're trying to explain it to someone else. But this book starts off with this plot point of there are opposing kingdoms, cities, And a long time ago, they wrote this treaty where they would kind of like unite their kingdoms and stuff by having an arranged marriage between one kingdom's god and another kingdom's princess. So the father offered up one of his daughters to be married off to this god or this god king, but the father who's offering up the daughter is basically like, I don't want to actually offer up this daughter anymore, even though she's literally been raised knowing that she's going to go off and marry this god king and has been like taught and trained everything she needs to know. It gets to the moment where it's time for him to send off his daughter, and he's like, actually no, I'm gonna send off the daughter that I don't really like that much because I like this one too much, so I'm gonna send off the one that's like, yeah, I don't really care about her because it doesn't matter if anything happens to her, which awful. Like, imagine you being that daughter. Awesome, thanks dad. So this random daughter with no training and no prior knowledge about this whole situation goes off to marry this god king, and the sister that was supposed to get married then goes and tries to rescue her sister. So you've got both sisters' POVs, and then you're also following another POV, which is too hard to explain, but you'll get it once you start reading it. And there's also such a fascinating magic system. It's all based around breath and color, and it's just so good. Like, this book is, I think, 600 and something pages, and I was interested the whole time. Again, I wouldn't say it's like action-packed, crazy stuff happening all the time. It's just kind of like, as you go along, you just unveil little piece after little piece, and all of the secrets start getting revealed, and you realized how complex and how layered this political situation is, and how no one really knows what's going on, and like who are actually the good guys, who are actually the bad guys. It's so good, guys. I would really recommend. I think I'd rate this like a 4.5, and it's made me so excited to continue reading Brandon Sanderson books. Next up, I read X's and O's by Amy Lee. I'm not gonna lie, I think it was kind of unfair for me to pick up this book after finishing Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson, because that was just like so complex, so layered, so well thought out, so intricate, and then I picked up like a silly little goofy rom-com, and I don't know, it didn't really hit the same, you know, as one would expect. But it was still cute, and I still had a good time. In this book, we follow Tara, who is a bookstagrammer, but she's also a nurse. She is such a hopeless romantic, but she has been dumped time after time by all of these different guys. But for some reason, she decides that she's gonna give all of her ex-boyfriends, all 10 of them, a second chance. So she literally like makes a list of her ex-boyfriends and then tries to like reach out to them and see if there's anything still there. And you kind of just like obviously follow her story as she does that. But she also recently moved into a new apartment with this guy called Trevor, who's a firefighter. And they've just become friends, and he's obviously following along this whole ex-boyfriend dating situation with her. I think I'd give it like a 3, maybe a 3.5. Like, it was good, it was fine. I think honestly, the thing that annoyed me the most about this book is the bookstagrammer situation. This book is technically the second book in what will be a 3-part interconnected standalone series type thing called the Influencer series. So the first book is about a fitness influencer, this one is about a bookstagrammer, and then the third one I think will be about a fashion influencer. And to be fair, I haven't read the first one, so I can't say anything on that one. But as someone who literally creates book content for a living, like this is what I do, I just feel like the representation of the whole bookstagrammer situation was not done well. Like, there was a scene where she was like sitting in the hot tub and she pulls up Instagram Live and then just like starts doing an Instagram Live when she's in the hot tub, basically just being like, these are my favorite tropes of the week. I love second chance romance. And I was just like, no. What? No, that's not what we do. And if any other book creators, bookstagrammers, booktalkers, whatever, have read this book and have an opinion on this, I would love to hear, because like, I'm not a bookstagrammer, really. Like, I have a bookstagram, but it's not like my main thing. Obviously, YouTube is really my main platform, so like, maybe you'd agree with it, but I don't know, it just felt cringy. It felt like it just dismissed any hard work that goes into creating book content. I don't know, it was hard for me to be able to appreciate that, and that was one of the things I was most excited about going into this book, because I feel like I haven't really seen that before, and I just felt like it was done poorly, in my opinion. I also thought this month would be a perfect time to do a reread of It's Not Summer Without You by Jenny Han, which is the second book in the Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy, obviously in honor of the second season of the Summer I Turned Pretty TV series coming out. So I just wanted to have a bit of a refresher, because I think I read this about a year ago. I reread this, it was good. I think this is my least favorite book out of the trilogy. I feel like just the least amount happens in general. I feel like the first book is probably my favorite, and then the end of the third book is my favorite, but I don't like a lot of things that happen in the third book. It's just very frustrating. But I am excited to continue watching the series and like see exactly how much of this they include and how much they change. I think I like the TV show better than the books, honestly. The books are just really short, so there's not really a whole lot that happens in the books. I just feel like the way they've done the series is so good. The music, the actors, all of it, like they've done such a fantastic job, and I honestly think, specifically this season, the TV show is already better, because there's just like not a whole lot that happens in this book. So I feel like in the TV show they've really had to like add some stuff in to make it more interesting, and they've done that, and I'm really enjoying it. I also read Charlie Love and Cliches by Ella Mays this month, and this book is kind of like a workplace romance. Basically, we have our main characters who met 6 years ago in a diner, and they spent like a week going to the same diner at the same time every night, and then on the last night the guy didn't show up, and the girl had no idea why, and they haven't seen each other since. Now it is 6 years later. This girl works at this company, like a crisis management company, which I will say that part of the story very interesting. And then a new guy gets hired, and it turns out it's Diner Guy from 6 years ago. And so our main character is like, does he remember me? Does he not? Why did he never show up on that last night 6 years ago? Like, so much has happened, and obviously the story kind of goes from there. And honestly, I'm not a huge fan of workplace romances. I feel like usually I just like don't care too much for them. There are so many more interesting settings for a book to have. Like, you're telling me you could have set this at the beach, in a cute little cafe, literally in the mountains, in a small town, and you chose like corporate America? Okay, pop off, I guess, but like it's just not my favorite. But yeah, like I said, I was pleasantly surprised by it. There were some aspects of this book that I really enjoyed. There's also a large dog component to this story, which I loved. I love dogs in books, I really do. I also really liked our female main character and our male main character, but I think it was just the romance that I just like didn't care about. I also think the conflict just wasn't my favorite, and one of the things that irked me so much reading this book is there are multiple times when the guy says to the girl, do you want to know why I didn't come on that last night 6 years ago? Like, literally offers up the chance for her to find out why he didn't come and why she's never seen him since. And she says no, like twice. She goes, no, I'm not ready to hear it. Like, what do you mean? Like, you're telling me something happened 6 years ago, you never got closure from it, you never found out why it happened, and now 6 years later, someone has come to you and said, I will give you the answer, I will give you the closure, I will give you the conversation that you have been wanting for 6 years, and twice you say no. Absolutely not. That's not gonna happen, surely not. Anyways, that was very frustrating to me because it was just stupid. But overall, I did like the book. I liked it in like a 3-star kind of way. Randomly at the end of July, I thought, you know what, I'm gonna pick up Ready Player One. This has been on my TBR cart for at least a year, maybe 2 years. It's been on there for a long time. I originally bought this based on Noelle Gallagher's recommendation. I know that this is one of her favorite books, or it was at the time, I'm not sure if it still is, and she just raved about it. And then I found it in an op shop and I thought, oh my gosh, Noelle loves this book. I want to try it out. So I bought it and it sat on my TBR cart for so long. I also never read sci-fi, like never ever. I don't know if I've ever read sci-fi. Some people say Vicious and Vengeful by V.E. Schwab is sci-fi, but some people also say it's fantasy, so I don't really know. But I'm definitely not well read on the sci-fi genre. So I think that was why I was so intimidated by it, but I just decided to pick it up and it was so freaking good, like so fun. This book centers around like a video game situation. Basically, in the future, there's this huge online kind of like VR virtual reality situation called the Oasis, and everyone has their own little avatar and they can obviously interact with other people and they create friends. And obviously in the Oasis, you can kind of be whoever you want to be. And our main character is from a pretty bad background. He is very poor, he doesn't have a lot of money, but on the Oasis, he is just so happy. He has friends, he feels like he has purpose. And you're following this main character as he goes on this like quest to find this specific thing. Basically, in this world, the creators of the Oasis made this like huge quest situation where it's like whoever can find this will be set for life. They will be rich, they will be successful. And so this guy is determined to find this thing and do this quest. And so you just follow him along as he does that, as he makes friends. There's a bit of romance to it, and I just did not expect to enjoy this as much as I did. I feel like my description really falls flat. Like, I feel like when you read it, it's honestly so interesting. I don't play video games, I don't know anything about video games, but I still found this fascinating. I really enjoyed this. I think I'd give it like a 4.25 maybe. It wasn't like my favorite book in the world, but I just enjoyed it so much more than I thought. But yeah, I would honestly really recommend this. Even if sci-fi is not your genre, even if you don't think you're gonna like it, I would recommend giving it a shot because I was just shocked by how much I liked this. And the last book that I read in July was Never Lie by Frida McFadden. This book is my book club's pick for July. For those of you who don't watch my weekly vlogs, you might not know, I have a book club with 3 of my friends in real life. But this month, my friend Georgia got to pick and she chose Never Lie by Frida McFadden. Never Lie is my 5th Frida McFadden book. It is set at this like old, really huge house, and these newlyweds show up at this house to tour it and see if they want to buy it. But when they show up, there's a snowstorm happening outside, and they go inside the house and they realize, oh my gosh, like we can't leave. So we're reading from the wife's POV, and she's kind of just exploring the house. She's really creeped out, but she's kind of just like sussing it all out, and she finds this hidden room in this house that is full of tapes. And on all of these tapes are recordings of a psychiatrist and her patients. So the lady who did own this house before it went up for sale was a psychiatrist, and then she just went missing. No one knows where she went. The story just kind of goes from there. So obviously lots of plot twists. And I'm not gonna lie, I did not guess the main plot twist. But I also just like wasn't that interested in the book until like 50% of the way through. I do feel like a common theme that I'm finding with Frida McFadden books is that I don't love her writing. It just feels a bit like unpolished to me. I don't know, they don't feel quite like perfect in terms of the writing. It just feels a bit clunky to me. But her plot twists are always so good, and I'm always like shocked by the ending. I don't think I've guessed any of them. So I enjoyed it. I don't know what I want to rate it. I think maybe a 3.75. Yeah, I think maybe a 3.5, maybe a 3.75. Overall, it was good. I enjoyed it. It was entertaining, but it wasn't a favorite, you know? But those are all the books that I have to talk about in this wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed. I've also already uploaded my TBR for the month of August, so definitely check that out if you haven't already. And also I forgot to mention in that TBR video, but in the month of August, I am also going to be taking part in the MS Readathon. So I'm gonna leave my little profile link down below if you want to check it out. But basically I'm just gonna be reading as much as I possibly can. My goal is 15 books, but I'm gonna even try for 20. We'll cross our fingers, we'll see what we can do. But if you would like to support me, you can donate through my link down below. All of the money that I will be receiving through that link will go straight to supporting and helping people who have MS, which if you don't know is multiple sclerosis, which is a very, very debilitating disease, and it's very, very heartbreaking. So the fact that me just reading books is going to help people in such a tangible way is mind-blowing to me. And I just feel so thankful that reading, which brings me so much joy, can actually make a difference in the world. So if you would like to donate, obviously no pressure, you totally don't have to. You can donate as little or as much as you would like. I'll leave that link down below, and I'll be talking about it probably a little bit more throughout the month. But thank you to anyone who has already donated. I have been blown away by the support I've already received, and I am so thankful for all of you because it's just such a special thing to be a part of. I did the MS Readathon all throughout primary school, so it feels very nostalgic to be doing it again as an adult. But yeah, thank you again, even just for making it to this part of the video. I really appreciate it. But I love you guys so much. I hope you have a fantastic day or night whenever you're watching this, and I will see you in my next video very soon. Goodbye.